Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is continuing to play out the short-term bullish divergence as predicted, while the US stock market is also continuing the short-term bounce. And while all of this is happening in the short term, Bitcoin is exactly wiping out the upside liquidity here on the Bitcoin liquidation heat map. So I'll be talking about what is next for the price of Bitcoin now that all of that has played out as predicted to that exact price target here, while Ethereum is also playing out this shorter term bullish signal, bouncing from a key level of support, while the price of Solana is also repeating history, massively playing out the bullish divergence in the short term. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, taking a quick look at the US stock market today. This is the S&P 500 index on the 1 hour time frame. And so far throughout the trading day, and of course, really over the last couple of days now, we've been seeing a decent bounce in the short term. Finally, after that previous little pullback in the short term, which is of course good news for Bitcoin and crypto. As I've been saying for many years now on the channel, there's a high correlation between the US stock market and the crypto market. Of course, it's not a perfect one-to-one correlation, but usually if we see a major dump in the stock market, we usually see something similar for a lot of crypto, and vice versa. If we see a decent bounce in the short term for the US stock market, we also tend to see some sort of at least a little bullish move, sometimes a larger bullish move in the crypto market on average. And so keep that in mind throughout the video. The short term is looking good for the stock market, which means short term bullish news for Bitcoin and crypto, but also keep in mind that this is just a shorter term move during a larger sideways price range. The same sideways price range we've been in basically the entire year so far for the S&P 500 index. So understand the difference between the different time frames. Short-term bullish, bigger picture still neutral in terms of the trends that we're in. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today on the weekly time frame, not a lot has changed over the last one day. The super trend indicator is still sitting in the red, indicating a larger bear market or a larger correction in the price of Bitcoin. And if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin price chart, obviously we still have a massive bearish divergence, which is technically still active. It's not yet been invalidated. So keep in mind, if we're talking about the larger trend we're in on the larger time frames for the price of Bitcoin, we're still not in the clear yet. We've still not officially confirmed the end of this larger bearish trend, or bear market if you want to call it that. But of course, it is worth pointing out that we did hit oversold over the last couple of weeks in the weekly Bitcoin RSI for the first time since around middle of 2022, which was near the end of the 2022 bear market, but didn't actually mark the actual bottom. We ultimately had one more major dip lower before then we actually bottomed out and formed a massive bullish divergence on the weekly time frame. And so just keep that in mind. This oversold signal on the weekly time frame does suggest a possible larger relief that could last for even a few weeks, maybe even a month, for example, if we're looking at what happens back here. But keep in mind, it's not necessarily a bottom signal officially confirmed when we're talking about the larger trend. So that's still the situation on the larger time frames. Not a lot changed over the last one day. And if we're taking a look at the 3-day Bitcoin price chart, obviously right now the price of Bitcoin is still just bouncing around sideways in the same sideways price range I've been talking about every day for around 3 weeks now on the channel, since basically this local low down here at around $60,000. From that day onwards, I've been saying it's extremely likely the price will bounce around in this range between 60,000 and around 72,000 is the low end of this area of resistance. And so obviously the price is still just simply chopping around sideways in this sideways price range between support and resistance in the somewhat midterm, if you want to call it that. If we're talking about basically a period of weeks, not necessarily months, not necessarily just a couple of days, but most likely a period of weeks. And of course, it's already been a few weeks of this playing out as predicted, and will likely continue a little longer here in the midterm, basically just chopping around in this range right here. But if we're talking about the very short-term moves on the 2-hour Bitcoin price chart, obviously this choppy sideways price action is made up of short-term bullish moves and of course short-term bearish moves. And I got quite a few comments in my last video right around here talking about how we're no longer playing out the choppy sideways price action because we've just had a bearish move and we're not seeing any bullish price action right now. But obviously, as I mentioned in my last video, we have a bullish divergence, which means expect a bullish relief of some sort as a very likely scenario from this point moving forward, is exactly what I said in my last video. And obviously since then, that is exactly what is now playing out as as predicted. Now, keep in mind, obviously, we're actually seeing quite a decent sized bullish move towards the upside, thanks to, of course, the US stock market having a decent bullish move in the short term. That's really helping out with the bullish divergence continuing to play out a bit further towards the upside than perhaps otherwise would have been. But overall, obviously, this bullish divergence has been perfectly playing out right here. But keep in mind, we are starting to enter into overbought now in the 2-hour Bitcoin RSI. And the last time we saw an overbought signal was back here around 14th of February. And of course, that was approaching a local high, not necessarily the top forever, but at least some sort of local high before soon we started to see another little cool off. So keep that in mind. We are now entering into overbought, which means very soon, not necessarily right this instant, but very soon, most likely within the next day or two, we'll start to slow down here, perhaps closer towards this resistance, and start to see a bit of a cool off within the next 1 or 2 days is very, very likely. And so in other words, it's quite likely the price is going to remain in this sideways price range for a little longer, which means, yes, we could maybe play out a little bit more bullish price action, but especially as we get closer towards this resistance here, especially around 71 to 72,000, we have strong resistance around there on the price chart, which means as the price gets closer towards that resistance, of course, previously there's been a lot of sell pressure around that area, and also as we're hitting further and further into overbought while we're getting closer towards resistance, just keep that in mind as a short-term risk for the price of Bitcoin, where we could start slowing down, possibly even see another rejection from around that area on the price chart. And that's especially also the case because we've now wiped out the exact level of liquidity that I've been talking about over the last few days. Obviously, throughout this drop right here, I've been reminding you over the last few days that we still have liquidity sitting at around 68.8K, give or take. So just under 69,000 is my target that I've been saying over the last few days to keep in mind. Watch out for that level. Still major liquidity at just under 69,000. And obviously, we've now exactly wiped out that liquidity right around here. But now that that has happened, the bad news is that we've now already wiped out that liquidity. It's no longer there. It's already been hit. Now, we do have a small amount building at just under 71,000, around 70.9K to 71,000, and also a very small amount at just under 70,000, but not anything as significant as that level that was sitting at around 68.8K. And so at least based on the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, this does suggest perhaps a little bit more bullish price action into that slight area of liquidity here at around 70 to 71,000 almost. But then as I just said a moment ago, we're hitting overbought now in the shorter term RSI, and we're also soon getting closer towards some major resistance, especially around 71 to 72,000, which means yes, we'll likely see a slight little bullish move continue moving forward, but then start to expect a slowdown and a cool off and possibly a rejection from around that region on the price chart. So overall, that is my exact prediction continuing to perfectly play out here in the shorter term. And of course, the midterm still chopping around in this range as predicted, and the longer term not really changed at all over the last 1 day. And of course, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any crypto, you need to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And if you use the first link below the video in the description and in the pinned comment, that first link below the video will take you to this page right here over on the 2bit crypto exchange, which is an exchange that I personally use myself, and it is also a no KYC exchange in case you're wondering. And simply just by making your account using that first link below the video to 2bit, once again it'll take you to this page where you can take advantage of up to 800,000 USD worth of prizes here simply just by trading crypto using that first link below the video. So especially if you're going to be trading crypto anyway or preparing to take the next trading opportunity, you might as well check this out and take advantage of this. Once again, first link below the video. And remember, 2bit is also a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a quick look at the Bitcoin dominance chart on the daily time frame, and for the most part, the Bitcoin dominance is not really in a strong trend either direction. We're still relatively neutral if we're looking at the overall trend right now on the Bitcoin dominance. Of course, in the shorter term, we have been taking a bit of a pullback, but overall, we're not really seeing a huge crash or a huge bullish move, which means a lot of the major altcoins on average will likely be performing very similar to whatever Bitcoin is doing, which of course means if Bitcoin is having a decent bullish move right now in the short term, expect something similar to that for a lot of the major altcoins. It's a very likely scenario, at least on average. And if we're taking a look at Ethereum on the 3-day time frame, obviously right now Ethereum on the 3-day chart looks almost identical to Bitcoin on the 3-day chart. Once again, a lot of the altcoins playing out very similar price action to Bitcoin, and that's also the case for Ethereum, as we can see, which is also still trying to play out this oversold signal in the 3-day Ethereum RSI, as I've been talking about every day for a few weeks now, which means expect most likely choppy sideways price action or perhaps a slight bullish relief, basically price action similar to what we saw near the end of 2025, but not necessarily confirming the end of the larger bearish trend, kind of like what we saw back here. And as for resistance, we are getting closer towards a massive area of resistance here, sitting in between around 2.2K to 2.4K. But before that area, taking a look at the daily Ethereum price chart, we have a lot of resistance actually just above 2.1K, more specifically around 2150 to 2250 as a strong area of resistance based on previous Fibonacci support flipping into new resistance at around 2150 is really where it starts at. And as for support, we have strong support here, which we just once again bounced from, sitting at give or take 1.8K. In fact, slightly above 1.8K, around 1810 to 1820 as a key level of support to watch out for, which once again has perfectly held over the last 1 to 2 days here. And if we're taking a look at the 8-hour Ethereum price chart, we actually have a form of a bullish divergence. It's not a typical bullish divergence. It's not the strongest form of a bullish divergence, but it is still a weak form of a bullish divergence, which is horizontal lows in the price and higher lows in the RSI. Once again, a typical strong bullish divergence would ideally be lower lows in the price in the candle closes while forming higher lows in the RSI. But once again, horizontal lows and higher lows is still a form of a divergence. This is just a weaker bullish divergence, but of course it's still ultimately a bullish signal as the name suggests. And so once again, as I talked about in my last video, this is yet another bullish signal confirmed in the short term, alongside on the 4-hour time frame this bullish divergence, which also confirmed in the short term, which I also mentioned in my last video. So like I said in my last video, now that this bullish divergence is confirmed on the 4-hour time frame alongside the bullish divergence on the 8-hour time frame, which is, to be fair, a weaker bullish divergence, but while that's also confirmed at the same time as bouncing from a major Fibonacci level of support, of course, all of this was pointing towards most likely some more bullish price action to come in the short term. Is exactly what I said in my last video before all of this has played out. And so obviously now that all of this is playing out, of course, that's now officially invalidated this triangle pattern right here in the break towards the downside, and therefore invalidating the bearish price target. So that's why I always say we need to pay attention to points of support along the way down. Even if we have a certain price target, which is technically trying to play out here, we cannot ignore points of support where the price would likely bounce from. In this case, just above 1.8K as a key level of support that I've been talking about for a long time now on the channel. And as for resistance to watch out for, as I just said, especially around 2150, but in the short term, we could find a small amount of resistance around these highs. So for example, around 2.1K, pretty much exactly 2.1K, we could possibly find some short-term resistance around there. And then once again, closer towards 2150, strong resistance around there. And of course, Ethereum, along with a lot of altcoins, will likely follow similar price action to what Bitcoin is doing, which means perhaps within the next 1 or 2 days, not necessarily right this instant, but very soon in the next 1 or 2 days, if we start to slow down a little bit as we approach resistance, now that we're hitting overbought in the short-term RSI, if all of that's happening for Bitcoin, expect something similar to that for Ethereum. Obviously, we're now hitting overbought in the 4-hour Ethereum RSI and getting closer towards some major resistance, which means most likely within the next 1 or 2 days, start to expect a little slowdown and a bit of a cool off, possibly even another rejection from this resistance around here. And so overall, that is my exact prediction and the key levels to watch out for in the short term for Ethereum. And if we're taking a look at XRP on the weekly time frame, the longer term trend has not changed over the last 1 day. We've not yet fully confirmed the end of the larger bearish divergence or the end of this larger multi-month bearish trend, but just in the short term, we are once again bouncing from this crucial Fibonacci area of support, still sitting in between $1.30 to $1.40. So obviously this is still acting as major support to pay attention to. And once again, we're currently seeing another bounce in the short term from that area. And in fact, if we're zooming in a little bit, taking a look at the 3-day XRP price chart, we're also still trying to play out this oversold signal in the 3-day XRP RSI, which is the first time we've seen this signal just a few weeks ago. This is the first time this is confirmed since around middle of July 2024. And so now Now, as I always say, an oversold signal by itself does not necessarily guarantee that we've hit the bottom and that we're now reversing out of the larger bearish trend. It does not guarantee that, but it does mean that it's very likely we're going to either have a slight bullish relief or potentially some choppy sideways price action in the coming days or weeks. And obviously, so far over the last few weeks, this is exactly what's been playing out as predicted, and this will likely continue a little longer, especially if Bitcoin and other major alts also continue this relief and maybe start testing these points of resistance. Once again, we'll likely see something similar for XRP, some sort of little relief continuing, a bit more of a break from the larger bearish trend, but not necessarily confirming the full-on reversal out of the trend. So we're potentially still in a similar situation to what we saw back here around December 2025. And if we're taking a look at the price of Solana on the 3-day time frame, it's a similar situation for Solana. Multi-month bearish trend technically still in play. We've not yet fully confirmed the end or the reversal out of the larger bearish trend, but the short-term situation, or really the mid-term if you want to call it that, talking about a few weeks or so, maybe a month, we're still chopping around in this sideways price range exactly as predicted, still bouncing from this support and rejecting from close to this resistance here. First of all, this support still sitting in between around $75 to $80, and we're also still trying to play out this oversold signal in the 3-day Solana RSI, which means expect either a sideways consolidation, choppy sideways price action, or just a slight bullish relief. Getting closer towards this resistance is quite likely in the coming days or possibly weeks here. But remember, that's potentially still occurring within the much larger bearish trend, kind of like what we saw just here near the end of 2025. That's still the situation, still perfectly playing out here. Nothing's changed for weeks. And if we're taking a look at the 2-hour Solana price chart, of course, what has just happened over the last one day is a decent sized bullish move, obviously following Bitcoin, stocks, etc., with those bullish moves in the short term. But we're also playing out a bullish divergence by itself here for Solana. Obviously, we have lower lows in the price, higher lows in the RSI, and this is what I talked about in my last video before all of this bullish price action right here, saying history is repeating. Expect most likely some sort of bullish relief coming very soon, following over the next couple of days. And obviously, since I said that yesterday, this is exactly playing out as predicted. In fact, it's playing out even better than what was potentially predicted. Obviously, I said maybe just a slight relief, but actually we're seeing quite a large bullish move thanks to, once again, the stock market having a decent sized bullish move. This is also accelerating the crypto market in the short term with these bullish catalysts that are already playing out as well. But just like what I've been saying throughout the video, even though this bullish divergence is still playing out, of course, we have to understand that we're now reaching well into overbought in the short-term RSI. So it's quite likely that, not necessarily right this minute, but most likely within the next 1 to 2 days, we'll start to slow down here, start to lose a lot of this bullish momentum, and of course, see some sort of little cool off within the next 1 or 2 days. We'll likely start that little cool off as a very likely scenario, potentially as we start to approach major resistance here, which starts at especially around $95. We have strong resistance in between $95 to $105, and we also have a bit of short-term resistance here at pretty much exactly $90. And so that is my exact prediction moving forward, a slight little cool off starting within the next 1 to 2 days, a slowdown, especially closer towards resistance. And of course, the sideways price range still playing out on the 3-day time frame. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the 3-day chart, it's still the same story here, still in this same sideways price range, bouncing from support. And currently, we're now actually testing this area of resistance, which is sitting in between $9.50 to $10. And this support is still sitting in between $7.90 to $8.50. So obviously, over the last couple of days, we've now seen another perfect bounce from my exact area of support. And we're also still playing out this oversold signal in the 3-day Chainlink RSI, which means either expect a little bullish relief of some sort or choppy sideways price action is a very likely outcome. And over the last few weeks, over the last 3 weeks or so, this is exactly what's been playing out as predicted. But remember, this is not yet fully confirming the end or the reversal out of the larger bearish trend. So for all we know, we're potentially still in a similar situation to what we saw around end of 2025. So keep that in mind. And if we're taking a look at the shorter term or the 2-hour Chainlink price chart, obviously, like I've been saying throughout the video and like I talked about in my last video, before all of this happened, we are playing out a a bullish divergence, which is officially confirmed, officially playing out on the 2-hour Chainlink price chart, which means expect most likely a bullish relief is a very likely scenario, kind of like what we saw back here. Obviously, we saw a decent bullish relief. Right now, we're seeing basically the same thing. History is repeating. But like I've also been saying many times throughout the video, Chainlink is also hitting well into overbought, at least in the smaller timeframes here on the 2-hour Chainlink price chart. RSI is well into overbought territories, which means very soon, not necessarily right this instant, but very soon within the next 1 or 2 days, we'll likely start to see a bit of a cool off, basically slowing down all of this bullish price action here and basically cooling off the RSI back towards more neutral levels, which means either a sideways consolidation or a slight little pullback is quite likely to begin within the next 1 to 2 days is a very likely scenario here, potentially as we're now testing this massive resistance here, sitting in between $9.50 to $10, which is the area where we are most likely going to start to struggle at or possibly see another rejection from. So keep that in mind if we're talking about short-term moves. And so overall, those are my exact predictions and the key levels to watch out for all of these crypto assets. And remember, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, check out those links below this video to those exchanges if you want to take advantage of massive bonuses only available using those links to certain exchanges. And if you want to actually know how you can trade at these moves, no matter what direction the price goes, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen, because the video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.